This video is going to be very useful for someone who is trying to clear automation testing interview. So in this video, I'm going to tell you what all techniques and topics you need to know before appearing for the automation testing interview, especially in Australia. So let's get started. So first question in any interview that you can get is, tell me about yourself. So in this particular question, you can tell them that I have got this much experience in automation testing, and I have got the domain knowledge in specific domain, for example, insurance, banking and finance, retail, etc. And also very important thing that you need to tell them is what tools you have worked on, and do not specify the tools or tell tools that you have not worked on. If you are pretty confident on those tools, then only specify those tools there. Otherwise, if they dig deeper into those tools and they ask questions, counter questions on those tools, then you might be in trouble. So mention those tools that you are compatible with. So here I have mentioned that I worked with Selenium, then WebDriver, that is another Selenium implementation in JavaScript. I have also mentioned Appium, UFT, Robot Framework, and then in the languages C#.NET, Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, Node.js, Python. So nobody expects you to be expert in all of these languages. So just select one of the languages which you are compatible in, because they may ask you the coding question as well. They will ask you to code as well. So remember that you have to tell them that, okay, this is my preferred language, so I'm gonna code in this particular language. So they will be happy with that. So make sure that you are compatible with any one specific language. So it is fine to tell them that you have worked on different languages, but when you are trying to code, make sure that you select specific language that you are compatible with. Next one is unit testing frameworks that you have worked on. You can tell them NUnit, JUnit, Mocha, Chai, PyTest, some of the very popular unit testing frameworks. Then BDD frameworks, SpecFlow and Cucumber, very popular in BDD space. So you can tell them about that. Then about the API testing, rest assured and Postman, JMeter and performance testing. So you can tell them that you have done the API testing automation as well using Postman, and through the coding as well using rest assured framework. And then there is a JMeter and performance testing. So if you are compatible with performance testing, then only tell the JMeter. Otherwise, if you are not compatible with the JMeter, do not specify this point. Then when you work in any automation project or any project as such in software development project, it is highly likely that you have worked on any of the cloud, for example AWS, and then CI/CD servers, and then build management tools. So you need to tell them that what build management tools you have used, what technology stacks you have used, and what cloud services you have used, for example AWS or Azure DevOps or Google Cloud. And also important thing is that CI/CD is getting a lot of traction these days. So it is very important that you tell them that you have worked on one of these CI servers, and you should also be able to create a new project in that CI server, new build configuration. You should be compatible with build configuration. What are the steps? They can ask you those things there. Then another important thing is Git and Docker as well. So Git is very basic, like in any automation, or if you're into the development or any IT project, Git is very, very important. So you should know it thoroughly. You should know how to commit the code, how to pull push, how to create the pull requests, how to review the code. All these things are very important, and they are used in any project. Another thing that you need to tell them, like if you have used the Docker, you can tell them I've used Docker and Docker containers, and you should be able to tell why Docker and containers are so much popular, or what is the main benefit that we get out of the Docker and containers. Then you can also tell them what kind of containers or the Dockers you have used. For example, especially if you're working on the automation, Selenium automation, then there is a Selenium Docker image that you can use to launch the Chrome browsers, and it comes with the Chrome driver as well. So you can tell them that you have used that image, and also there are a lot of other images like Linux distributions as well. Then you can talk about the package manager as well, package manager and the build management tools. So each technology stack will have these different package managers. For example, in .NET there is Nugget, in Node it is NPM or Yarn, and similarly other tech stack also has got different package managers. So you can talk about them. And then there is a build management tools as well. For example, Maven, Gradle. These are the build management tools. MS Build, .NET Test, .NET Build, etc. So you can talk about that, and you can also tell about the operating system as well. So if you are compatible with all three major operating systems, Windows, Linux, and Mac, that will be the icing on the cake, and they will be happy to interest will grow in interviewer's mind, like, okay, this guy knows most of the operating system, and he has worked on lots of diverse technology tools and stacks. So they will show a lot of interest in you, and then ask next questions based upon that. Coming to the responsibilities and daily activities, this is also a very common question that is asked in the interviews. So you have to tell them, in detail what all activities you do on daily basis in your role. So in any automation testing project, you will have to first step that you need to do is understanding the requirements of the features or the product that you're going to automate. Then based upon the requirements, you can create the test plan and the strategy, and requirement traceability matrix can also be created, where we specify the requirements and then the scenarios that cover those requirements. So in any project, this is the first basic steps that you need to do. And once you have got the requirements and the scenarios, you can write them. Once you have got the requirements, you can write the tests or the scenarios. And scenarios can be fall into two categories: UI scenarios and API scenario, or the backend scenario. To write the tests or design the tests, there are different techniques that you can use: equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, compatibility testing, exploratory testing, state transition testing, boundary value analysis, equivalence partitioning. So all these techniques are used to create the test scenarios, and if you have done the ISTQB course, you would already know this. Next thing is writing non-functional tests. So the previous point covered the UI and API automation, which falls under functional scenarios, but you also need to think about the non-functional aspects of the system as well. So you can tell them that we have to do performance testing as well. We have to check the throughput of the server, how much load server can take. So you can talk about that, and you can use JMeter for that one. Next one is very important: designing and development of the framework with different components. So you can tell like what are the steps you will take if you want to develop the automation framework from the scratch. So you can tell them you can use the Git version control. So that is the first thing that you will do. You can think about the version control, and Git is the leader in that. So you can tell them, I will use the Git. I can use the Git server, for example, GitHub, Stash, or GitLab, depending upon what server your organization using. It can be any server, so it should be fine. But underlying technology is same, that is Git. Then you can talk about the Git branching strategy and branch protection rules. So whenever somebody is trying to merge the code from the feature branch to the master branch, you should not allow that, because if the review has not happened, that merging should not happen. So you can create such protection rules. You can design the Git branching strategy, how the branches will be created, what is the default branch, master, release, how people will pull, like when they want to create a when they want to work on the new branch or the new features, and then how to create the branch, what are the different conventions that you have used while creating the branch. So that thing you can talk about. Another important thing is webhooks. Git webhooks, they allow you to notify the external services when certain event happens. For example, somebody pushes the code into the repository, then Git server will notify the build agents or other CI/CD servers that, okay, we have got new changes, so do you want to build it or not? So they can take the actions later on. And then another thing is you can also add the secrets as well. For example, some secret passwords or keys. So if you want, you can't put it in the repository, you can't put it in the files, you can't put it in the variables as well. So you will have to encrypt that and save it in the version control system or the CI/CD server. So you can use the secrets concept in that situation. Next thing is you have to select the unit testing framework. So depending upon the tech stack, again, there are different testing frameworks. If you talk about the .NET, there is a unit. If you talk about Node.js, there is a Mocha. So you can pick and choose the testing framework that is popular in that particular tech stack. And most of the testing frameworks, unit testing frameworks, will have the hooks, before, after hooks, and then there will be a test annotation which marks the particular method as test, and then you can use those unit testing frameworks to write your tests. And then in any other in any automation framework, there has to be a configuration manager, because certain data or the variables that we want to use when doing the automation, we will have to store that configuration in separate files. It is not recommended to hard code those values in the code. So we will have to create some configuration files, and there has to be a mechanism to read those variables and access those variables in the framework. So configuration manager utility you can create, which reads the data and that can be used in the code. So there are two aspects to this. One is configuration manager in the local environment, and configuration manager in the cloud. So in the local configuration manager, you can store the files, but most probably in the cloud-based setup, what you have to do is you have to create the, for example, in Azure, there is a configuration variables management setting. So you can create various variables, and then you can attach it to the project or the build, and then build will use that variables. So you should also have that capability in your code to read the files from that variables management setting, and as well as to read from the local file. So that's how you can design the configuration manager. Next one is a logging and reporting frameworks. So logging and reporting is also very important, because whenever the test fails, you need to understand, you need to have the stack trace in the particular report, so that we can analyze why the test has failed, and we should be able to easily track the problem. So that's why the logging and reporting framework is very important. And in terms of logging, there are different frameworks. Again, in .NET there is a log4j, or Java there is log4j, and in .NET also there is a similar kind of testing unit, a logging framework that you can use. Then there is a data modeling. So before working on any project or the application, one of the very important step is to create the data models for that particular application. For example, if it is an insurance website, there will be say for example the first form, we have to enter traveler details, traveler dates, destination, etc. So you can create one global object called as test data, and then you can put you can create the members in that particular class. For example, travelers, the collection of travelers. It will be an array of the travelers, and then there will be a ages, and then there will be a destination list. So you can create those variables. So main purpose of creating the data models is that we can manage the test data very easily. And once the test data is in the objects form, you can easily use the dependency injection to share the data. So from one class, you can easily share that in another class, because when in the dependency injection, what happens is that that particular data model we can put it into scenario context, for example, in BDD frameworks, and then scenario context is like a global object, so we can use that in any other class. Next one is page object model. So if you are working on the Selenium automation or the web application, then you will have to create the page object models, and then that way we follow the like object oriented concepts techniques to design our testing framework. Then there is a BDD and TDD. BDD frameworks, we use the like human readable language, even and then syntax. We can create the feature file scenarios and then execute our test. So main purpose is that all the stakeholders in the project or the squad or the tribe or any person in the organization can read and understand what that BDD feature file or scenario is doing. Okay, so let us imagine that the framework is ready, test cases have been written, everything is looking good. Test cases you are able to execute locally as well. But this is not how it works in the real life project. So you have to execute your tests on the cloud, on the CI server. So this is also very critical, important step in the success of any automation project. So what you have to do is you have to execute your tests in AWS or Azure DevOps. Or there will be a CI server which is again running in like locally in house or in the in premises or in the cloud as well. So you should know how to work with Jenkins, TeamCity, Bamboo, how to create the project builds, and how to integrate the Git repository, how to check out the code. Then once the code is checked out, how to build it. Locally, you can build it through the IntelliJ IDE or say any other IDE, but in the cloud, you have to use commands, and then let us say ms build or npm install. Those commands you will have to use to build the particular project. The typical build automation testing build will have like build steps. For example, the first one is creating a like building or compiling the files, and then we have test, okay, execute the test. So we will have mvn test, for example. So you can write those build steps. So build steps is basically the instructions that we tell what to do with the source code. We have to compile it. Once it is compiled, we have to we have to execute the tests. Once it is test execution is done, the report is generated in the form of some other files, XML or HTML. So we will have to tell the CI or CI server that okay, once this particular report is generated, store it as the artifact. So main purpose being that artifact is stored on the server, and then anybody can access later on as well. Doing the integration with any CI server, what you have to do is you have to first of all find out the agents and link those agents with your project or build. So for your build, it might need certain SDKs, and when you are trying to provision the agent for the CI/CD server, you will need to remember that that particular agent should be capable of building your project. Because say if you are building say Node.js, or you are building some Java application, then you might need Maven or JDK. So you need to ensure that those particular SDK tools are installed on the agent. If they are not installed, then obviously builds will fail. And for example, certain builds might need that you need to have a Mac operating system with Xcode installed in it, because you want to run the test on Safari. So depending upon the build, you will have to choose the build agents as well. And that's how you can build the project. Once the project is built, you have to create the release pipeline. So release pipeline is basically what it does is that it takes the build artifacts that have been created in the build step, and then those artifacts can be used to deploy to the server and launch the server. Or you can also in automation testing projects, that artifact can be used, and then that artifact is used to run the test. For example, you can do mvn test, or you can do you can use the Mocha to run those tests. So in the release pipeline, another thing that you need to remember is you can deploy the project in different environments. So in testing as well, you have to run the test in different environments. Dev environment, then there is a UAT environment, and there is a staging, production, like that. So in the release pipeline, we tell like in which environment we want to execute this release. Once the deployment is done, we can send the HTTP post request to the build server to start the execution of tests. So if you want to continuously execute the test as soon as the deployment happens, then you can do something like that. You can create a web hook, and that will send the request to the build agent or the build server, and then that will take the action. Like it will just start the tests in that particular environment. And test execution can also be scheduled as well as manually triggered, and it can also be triggered as soon as the Git server gets the new changes. Like whenever somebody pushes to the master branch, for example, in that case polling happens, and then those changes are picked up, and then build is created, and then test execution is done. And finally the reports are generated. Extend reports are also very popular here. The HTML reports are generated. So better reporting is important, because if you want to share it with the management, then they can have a look at these reports, and then if it is in the graphical format, that can give them the confidence that build is good quality. Another thing is when we are doing the testing, there can be a regression testing, smoke testing, or we have to run the subset. So in that case, you will have to filter the test cases, and then if you are using the BDD senior framework, then you will need to use the tags. And in other frameworks, there are similar kind of features where we can filter the tests based upon specific tags or attributes or the class names, etc. So that way you can execute the subset of the tests. Now once the execution is done, for example, if all tests are passed, everything is green, all good, But if the test cases fail, we need to analyze and then find out if it is actually a defect, and then raise the defect, talk to the developers, talk to the product owner, talk to the business analysts, and then just make sure that everyone is aware about the defect and the impact of that. Now, talking about the processes, Scrum model and the Spotify tribe model. In Scrum, there is a sprint meetings, sprint planning, sprint retros, and sprint reviews or the showcase. So this is what happens in the normal sprint project, or the project or the company, the project that is the Scrum process. And there is another model called a Spotify tribe model, in which like we just structure the organization to scale agility. So it is useful in bigger organizations, and especially the tribes are like bigger, like 40 people, 60 people, 100 people, like that. So agile models, the Scrum is good for the small teams, but if the team or the company is bigger, then a Spotify tribe model is the best for them. And in a Spotify tribe, there are 3 important persons: tribe lead, product lead, and the design lead. They have specific responsibilities to manage the process. And tribe can have multiple squads. A tribe can have multiple squads. Squad is like a team in the Scrum context. And chapter can be created to form a group of people from different squads. So if you are working in a team and you face a problem, you want to see if other teams or the squads have faced the similar problems, then in that case chapter is very important. If you are part of chapter, you can discuss your problems and the solutions with other squads, and then you can just reuse their solutions, something like that. So it brings the transparency. And then organization can have multiple tribes, and again if people in one tribe do not know about the what people are doing in another tribe, so to solve that problem, they have come with the concept called as guild. So guild is basically a team that is formed across the tribes. People are like grouped from across the tribes, and then the team is called something, and that is called as guild. So that's all. That's how you can explain them, the tools that you have used, the processes that you followed, then how to design the framework from the scratch, how to run the tests locally, how to run the tests in cloud, how to create the builds, how to execute the test in a specific environments. And I don't think there is anything that is left. So everything is covered. Only thing that you need to remember is that you have to be pretty confident that about what you are talking about. If you are not confident, if you look very not that confident, then obviously interviewer will say that this person knows but is not confident. His communication skills are not good, and that way you might get the rejection. So if you want to succeed in the interview, I will recommend that be confident and just tell them whatever you know, because they want to understand more about you. If you do not tell them everything that you know, or the most important things that you want to tell, then obviously they will not know about it. So make sure that tell as much as possible, whatever you need, whatever you know, just tell them about that, so that they will get an idea like if you are the right candidate for them. So that's it. If you have more questions on any topics or anything related to automation, let me know in the comments and I will get back to you. Thanks for watching this video.